Well, let's also get reaction and insights from Brad Allen. He's the founder and director of Branav Shareholder Advisory Services. Good to see you, Brad. Thanks for joining us.
Good to see you, Catherine.
I know you were able to hear some of Tom's comments and certainly John Thornton's comments saying that, we're going to fix the situation. What's your reaction?
Well, to Tom's comments, I had to shake my head in agreement because I agree common sense needs to come back into the picture a bit more, and the board needs to be more accountable. With respect to John, I think that's a pretty significant gauntlet he's thrown down to suggest he's going to turn a 25-75 to a 75-25 or better next year. But I guess we'll see what he brings out of his hat to accomplish that.
Tom also said, it means less when you're saying it and you've had a couple of years of the same issue.
Well, I think it's ironic. I don't know if you noted the equity compensation disclosure in the circular, but the first line says Back to the Future. I don't think their view of Back to the Future was what actually turned out, because what the Back to the Future is, we're back to another failed compensation vote. So, and it took 40 pages. I haven't been keeping track, but it took 40 pages of disclosure on executive compensation to try and explain it, which I don't know if that's a big number.
Explain
that sounds like
what?
to explain how they came up with their compensation philosophy in
40
the program.
pages.
40 pages.
Right. Okay.
Seems a little excessive. I don't know. I don't keep track of it, but when I looked at it, it jumped out at me. And then another 7 pages as a response to the proxy advisory firms turning it down from John Thornton, explaining why we still think it's a great plan.
Right. I think that there were 8 points that said why it was still the right price to pay when they had already seen this issue come across their table. I'm wondering as well, I wanted to get Tom's view on this as well, of course, but not a lot of people, but there are people who are directors on boards. When you see this evolve, and you see 4 large pension funds vote down compensation, if you're a director on a board, you will potentially have some responsibility for these outcomes, correct?
Correct, most definitely.
What do you think directors should now be thinking, and maybe the CEO, what they should be thinking as they watch this unfold, as we talk about this unfold?
I think you have to back it up a little bit. I think they should have been thinking about this before the reaction to understand perhaps what the plan they were putting forward wasn't the best idea. But most definitely, it'd be interesting to see the official vote results to see what the hit may have been on the vote for the directors on the comp committee and the overall board to see just how significant that negative vote or that withhold vote was. But
why does that matter? Why look at how negative a vote is? Isn't it just negative?
It's just negative, but the quantum is what's more meaningful. It expresses more shareholder dissent, because the advisory vote is just that. It's an advisory vote. It looks bad from a perceptual perspective. Engaging companies want to try and reverse that flow, sometimes successfully, sometimes not in this case. But the real stick that investors have is with the director vote. And with Barrick's majority vote and director resignation plan, if you're very disenchanted with how the board is running these things, you can vote them off, and they have to resign. From
your experience, how do you think chairmen and CEOs should be compensated? As I mentioned to Tom, and you heard this, you have to pay for talent. That's the way the world works. But what's the right number? How should interests be aligned? It doesn't sound like it should be with the stock price.
No, it shouldn't be with the stock price, because we've, according to, and agreed with Tom's point, there's been enough stories of the manipulation in driving for stock prices too short term. I don't know what the actual number is. The alignment needs to be, it can't be, there's a 70% gap currently in Barrick between what Thornton was paid on an increased percentage versus the decrease in the overall profitability. That gap needs to be managed. It needs to be closer to parity. That's the way I think I look at it. Everyone should be going with a rising boat, or everyone should be sinking with a lower sea. That's, I think, the common sense aspect of it. So I believe Barrick paid $100 and some odd thousand to try and get this vote approved, according to the proxy circular, with proxy solicitation. But it's one of those 2012 Back to the Future moments again, where what were they thinking? How do you explain a 70% gap? Does it make sense?
I wonder, for our viewers who might be individual owners of Barrick stock and they're listening to this conversation, they're really trying to figure out, what does this truly mean to me at home? Does it mean that I've got a management who now says they listened but clearly haven't for 2 years, and that could be a good thing for the stock. Does it mean that there's new good change to come, and that could be another positive or a positive?
I guess it's a question of how much faith you put into it. You'd have to think that repetitive getting hammered in the head about your compensation, that hopefully someone finally gets it, and therefore on the shorter term there will be a positive improvement. Unfortunately, we've seen 2 years where that hasn't yet sunk in with Barrick. Hopefully, you know, I don't know how long we keep hope alive.
Last question, and I know we have to go, but have you ever seen 4 large pension funds vote down pay?
Well, we saw it with Barrick a couple of years ago.
Was it 4 though? Like, I guess what I'm asking is, were the pension funds as vocal in the past as we've seen right now?
No, definitely. It's been an increase, and I noted a few years ago you'd have one, and it really stuck out. I can't remember it was a resource company as well out west. It was just struck everyone out of the blue that there was an actual press release from an institutional investor.
Okay.
Now we're starting to see that as being part of the sort of formula that they're using. They recognize that they can generate a lot of pressure that way. So I think we'll see more of it.
All right. Brad, great to see you. Thanks so much for coming in. Thanks. That's Brad Allen. He is the founder and director of Brand Shareholder Advisory Services.